And now, a man who campaigned against Barack Obama in all 57 states, Mark Galar.
Welcome to the Tea Party Power Hour. I'm Mark Galar. I'll be your host as we make a very, very exciting announcement. My guest today is Susan Daniels. Many of you will remember her as the private investigator who discovered that there were problems with Barack Obama's Social Security number. She's here today to tell us about her latest effort to get to the truth on this issue. Susan, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you, Mark, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you on. Now, if we could, before we make our big announcement, I don't want to tease the audience too much, but before we make our big announcement, could you kind of take our listeners through memory lane and tell us when you first discovered that there was a problem with Barack Obama's Social Security number and exactly what that problem is, or those problems are?
Yeah, I started an investigation of him in August of 2009. And because I've been an investigator since 1995, I've done this work for many years, and I know when I see a problem immediately. And I ran his name, and it came up that he had a Social Security number that had been issued in Connecticut between the years of 77 and 79. And I instantly knew there was a problem. Because he was 15 years old at the time and living in Hawaii, and Social Security numbers then, they've changed it now, but then were issued at the state you lived in when you applied.
Now, critics of what you've said have, and I want to give you a chance to address this, have come out and said that the numbering system for the cards was never really meant to be an absolute in terms of where somebody lived and registered for the card. Your comment on that? Well,
there is a statement right on the Social Security website. People should feel free to go look at it. And it talks about how starting in June of last year, they randomized the issuance of cards now. But prior to that time, they were issued by area, and the first three numbers were the area, and they represented the state of the person. When they applied, their address that they used on their application is directly related to the state. So the number he uses starts with an 042 that was strictly set aside for residents of Connecticut. So that is false. It was directly related to the state, and it says that on their website now.
What about all those people who say, well, you know, in Hawaii they start with a 9, in Connecticut they start with a 0, somebody transposed a number or something, and it was just an honest clerical mistake, they got the 9 and the 0 mixed up?
Oh, this is the one I love the most, because they are half right. Some of the zip codes in Hawaii are 968, and Connecticut start with 068. So it's like, okay, maybe there's a chance here. Well, the zip codes that Obama had in Hawaii were 96822, 96826, and 96814. Well, I went to the postal site in Connecticut, and in fact ended up talking to someone in the post office in Connecticut. The numbers 06822 and 06826 have never been used, and 06814 was a unique number used only by the company of Union Carbide starting in 1983, and they stopped using it several years ago.
So that pretty much rules out the numbers got mixed up. Now,
oh, yeah.
So one of the things that someone told me recently, and I'm going to have to apologize, I think it may have been Linda Bentley with the Saroyan News, a conservative newspaper in Arizona.
Right.
But I've been told that once you reach the age of 12, you have to apply in person.
That's also on the Social Security website.
So Obama, who was born in '61, would have been well over the age of 12. Depending, I mean, when did you say you applied for this? 1977.
I can tell you what date his number was issued, and it was March 28, 1977, and he was 15 on that date. 15
on that date. Very good. So we know the exact month, and you.
I know the exact date because the number that was issued for the person before him and 4 numbers after him, those were both issued on March 28, 1977. So, I mean, you have to be crazy not to realize if his numbers between those two, that his wouldn't have been issued that date, too.
That's a good point. Now, and plus at age 15, I mean, it's not even close on whether he had to go down and apply because he was 3 years older than you. He was 3 years past the date at which you have to apply in person.
Yeah. And I know. I had to go in person and apply when I got mine. I'm a lot older than him, and it's still their rule today. And I can't imagine it having been changed and then changed back.
I can't either. And the point is that people have made all kind of flimsy excuses for why this might have happened. But the fact is, talking with a lot of people about assuming someone else's identity, one of the first rules of that is that you assume the identity of someone who's already passed on so there won't be a conflict. And with that in mind, it leads us right into my next question. There are 2 birth dates, or at least 2 birth years, listed on Obama's Social Security number paperwork, for lack of a better term. The number 1890 appears in the birth date box. It doesn't have a month or a day with it, but 1890 definitely seems to be a year, and it's in the box where Obama's birth date is listed. So, Susan, I ask you as a private investigator with many, many years of experience, have you ever in your career seen more than one birth date in that box?
No.
How many would you say you've looked at?
Thousands.
Thousands. And you've never seen anything other than one birth date in that box?
Right.
That alone should arouse suspicion. Now, one of the things I've heard, and this is a very flimsy argument, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there so you can knock so you can knock it down, is that a lot of people go, well, 1890, we didn't have Social Security in 1890.
No kidding. Social Security came into effect in 1936. It was voluntary unless you worked for a company, and then they sent around, at that time it was an SS4 to the companies and asked them to list all their employees and everything. How successful that was, I don't know. But if a person was self-employed, you did not have to get a Social Security number. And in fact, my grandparents, who both lived and worked here, never had Social Security numbers. That's not true. They want to say that it was, it was issued in 1890. No, let's not be silly here. Social Security started in 1936. The number that Barack Obama is using was issued on March 28, 1977. However, it never shows up with his name until 1986. And it should have shown up before then because he was in California in school, and he was at
Baskin-Robbins.
Well, no, that could have been an under the table thing. Columbia. He was at Columbia University. It should have shown up for New York, and it didn't. So there is no. I have addresses for him in Chicago. I have addresses for him in Massachusetts when he was at Harvard, and in Washington, D.C. when he was a senator and as president. But there was no address ever showed up for California or New York, and they should have. But those things were before 1986. Now, the only other time his number shows up prior to 86 is on that alleged Selective Service application he was supposed to have filled out in 1980 that there are so many questions about the legitimacy of it.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now. I'm being stonewalled, and what's kind of interesting about that, and I'll just throw this in quickly and we'll get back to the Social Security number, is, and I haven't had a chance to tell you this yet, Susan, but I sent a FOIA request to the Selective Service people, and I was very careful not to mention the state of Hawaii, not to mention Barack Obama. I just gave a zip code and a year, and what I was asking them to do was to go through, get me every single person who registered in certain zip codes, some of the ones you just mentioned, by the way, in fact, all of the ones you just mentioned, and redact all the personal information, which would free me from having to prove that these people have passed away. Yeah. Redact all personal information, basically just leave the seal on there and the date of application and the zip code, and send me every single one from those zip codes from the year 1980. And it was kind of funny because other people send FOIA requests to the Selective Service people and they deal with low-level employees. Mine went straight to the number 2 man. And he wrote me a letter back saying that the information I was requesting is not available. So, yeah, there's something wrong with that Selective Service Card. As we discussed at the last Sheriff Arpaio press conference, it doesn't have a 4-digit year date.
No.
The 8 in the 80 is upside down, and it's shoved way too far to the right, which is impossible because those stamps were encased by a metal border all the way around. So, not to mention there are problems with the DLN numbers, and there are just all kind of problems with it.
Well, but in addition, which there, you know, I saw cards from a half a dozen people that had filled out their form within 2 or 3 days of his, and each one of theirs was stamped 1980.
Yes, we were fortunate to find 2 cards. I say we, it was Linda Bentley of the Sonoran News in Arizona, was fortunate to find 2 Selective Service cards that came from the same post office in the same week, and there was no problem with the stamps.
No.
Of course, Obama's life is a history of what he claims are clerical errors, but
those of us who are reasonable call them lies.
Exactly. Now, I don't think that there's any question in our listeners' minds that Social Security number he has problems. I think you've probably been frustrated by the fact that no one really wants to take up this issue. I think of all the lawsuits out there, there really isn't one based solely on the Social Security number. Most of it seems to revolve around the birth certificate. So, share with us, if you will. Actually, you have 2 major announcements today. Go ahead and share whichever one of those you'd like to first.
I'm not sure what the second one is, but the
first one is your candidacy, I guess.
Oh yeah, I am officially. I'm certified as a write-in candidate for president in Ohio, and that happened this week.
The next president of the United States, Susan Daniels.
And the second thing is, I filed a lawsuit on Monday here in the county that I live in, asking that the court have the Secretary of State look into the Social Security number. And what I did intentionally is I included not only the complaint, but I included all my documentation, including everything from the government sites, which really were very helpful to me to prove my point. And the filing is 101 pages long.
Wow.
Yeah, 18 of the pages are the complaint. And I did this pro se, and what that means is I did it myself. I did not have an attorney do it. Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, I have no money. And second of all, I I don't believe for a second that I could have explained well enough to an attorney how this all worked. So I sat down and I wrote something, and the first effort was quite pathetic. And I found that an old friend of mine who started editing it for me, and we sent the document back and forth probably 8 or 10 times. And he was very clever about the format, how it should look. And every time he found a problem with it, he would submit a question. And then I would have to go satisfy whatever the answer was to the question he was asking. Like if I made a statement, he'd just write authority with a question mark. And I'd have to then go find some place in the law that supported that.
So when the Secretary of State there in Ohio...
Oh, and by the way, that's who I sued, is the Ohio Secretary of State. He's the only person, he's the only defendant.
So the second he approved you to be on the ballot for president, you thanked him by turning around and suing him.
Yes, same day.
Wow, same day. That's a fine.
Well, I had been waiting. I mean, I know. I had it ready to go, and they held me up for 7 weeks. They said the issue was that they made me name a vice president also, and then I had to include the names of 18 electors who were registered voters who would agree to be my electors if I won.
Can we ask who the vice presidential pick was?
Oh, his name's Jerry Vineski. He's a longtime friend of mine, and he's also a private investigator.
I have to ask, did I at least make the short list?
Well, you know what? If I knew then what I know now, you would have, because it turns out they claimed that one of the things that held it up was that the president and vice president named are not supposed to be from the same state. But then they decided that since that's not in the U.S. Constitution, they would approve it, but that my electors would not be allowed to vote for him. And I'm thinking, fine with me. The other issue was I was upbraided for including 20 names instead of just 18, although there were 20 spaces on the application. And I did that intentionally in case any of them turned out not to be registered voters.
Now, is this from the same state where I understand that on Election Day someone can walk into the polling place and say, "Hi, I'm Schmitty. I live on Park Bench number 5, and I'd like to vote," and they register them right there?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It is also the same state where 4 years ago they were busing in people with Alzheimer's from nursing homes, and the people that worked at the Board of Elections were filling out their applications to vote, which is against the law. And I know this because I was listening to a radio show and a woman called in and told the people at the station what was going on.
For a lot of people who would be wondering why you decided to run for president, that's obviously to give you standing in the case?
Yeah. Yes, and in fact, I may pursue it. I may pursue the candidacy with vigor. But if I don't, it does give me standing. And that's been one of the big issues that these ridiculous judges have been throwing cases out left and right, is lack of standing. I have standing now.
Well,
because
personally, I think anybody who's a citizen in the United States who has to live with the decisions that this guy makes, for instance, Obamacare, anyone who's a citizen having their lives affected. I mean, for instance, we're all going to be paying more taxes next year because of this gentleman in the White House. Anyone who's affected in any way should have standing. I don't think you should have to run for the presidency.
And it offends me so deeply that they tell these people they have no standings. They're citizens of the United States. They have standing and the right to sue anybody.
It's kind of like when people ask Sheriff Arpaio, I mean, you're the sheriff of a county in Arizona. What makes you think you have any right to investigate the president. Well, the last time I checked, Maricopa County's in Arizona. Arizona's one of the states in the United States, so why shouldn't he have the ability to investigate the president?
Well, not only that, he's the most important law enforcement officer in the state. All sheriffs are.
Couldn't agree with you more. Okay, so where do we go from here? What's the next step in the process for you?
Well, I now sit and wait until they respond. They have to answer as soon as they're served, and they are served by the court, who sends out the complaint by certified mail. As soon as they're served, and it should not be a problem serving the Secretary of State, I then wait. I wait till they respond. They have to respond with an answer within 28 days, and then the court will probably set a court date and for some kind of hearing. And I mean, I've never done this before. I've never filed a lawsuit like this before, and so the answer is I'm not really sure, but I'm ready.
Well, I have absolutely no doubt about that, Susan. I know you're ready, and they've been coming up with some really ridiculous arguments. In one state they said we have every right to nominate someone who's not qualified.
That made me sick.
And then another state they said, well, he's not really the nominee yet. I mean, we keep hearing these flimsy excuses. It's almost like they don't even want to get into
what my lawsuit says is I am not asking the Secretary of State to find that he's not qualified for the job or that he's ineligible. My allegation is that he is using a fraudulent Social Security number, which is illegal, and that before his name is put on the ballot, the Secretary of State, because he took an oath of office to swear to uphold not only the Ohio but the U.S. Constitution, now that he has been made aware that there is a serious problem here, he has a duty to investigate.
One would think he does.
Oh, he absolutely does, because under the Constitution, the person has to be, he has to be qualified. If you were using a fraudulent Social Security number, you are not qualified. Well, you'd be qualified as a felon, but you would not be qualified to hold the job.
I've never really looked into it, but you would think that having a felony on your record would prevent one from running for president.
He doesn't have a felony on his record.
I mean, he would if if the Secretary of State finds that the card is in the Social Security number is ineligible, though. I'm saying,
and the beauty of this lawsuit is, I found a section in the I don't know if it wasn't the Ohio Revised Code, but I found a document that said that the forms that are handwritten and filled out for an application for Social Security number, they're called an SS5, that those are all microfilmed and kept forever. The originals are destroyed, but the microfilm is kept. Now, I have documents showing all the information for the number immediately before his, all the information, including the handwritten card for the number 4 numbers after his, and in fact for one, then another 12 behind his. So if those are all available, then his is still available. They can't say his is missing because it can't be. I have the number immediately before it, and 4 after, and 12 after it. The thing that's interesting is the person that had the number that ends in 37. She was born in 1896 and got her card issued on March 28, 1977 also.
So this whole idea of people who say, nobody born in the 1890s would have waited that long to get their card goes out the window with just that one record.
Oh, it's in with the documents. It's in the packet that's in the court right now.
Well, let's hope this Secretary of State does a better job than Ken Bennett in Arizona.
Well, they're going to have. I mean, this is going to be an issue. This is not going to be an easy thing to throw out. I mean, they will try, but this is not going to be so easy as the rest of them. Because I am saying, yes, the Secretary of State did not have, he's not required to vet candidates. But it said, that assumes that the information given to him by a political party is correct. And that's not the case. He will. He swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. I have brought to his attention now, or he will be seeing it tomorrow, the next day, that there is a fraudulent Social Security number being used here. What's the reason?
See, that's what a lot of people don't get, is that there are so many eligibility issues that aren't necessarily tied to the birth certificate. The Selective Service Card, the Social Security.
Oh no, this is an entirely separate issue. It's separate from the natural-born citizenship. It's separate from the birth certificate. It's separate. This stands alone, and as you mentioned, the in excess of 130 lawsuits filed, I think most of them were actually about natural-born citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And every one of them has been tossed, and they usually use standing to do it. It's a disgrace. It is a disgrace what our judicial system has become.
I would agree with you. And in the case of the judicial system, I kind of understand it because we have a lot of liberals there. But our conservative media, and I don't miss too many opportunities to go after them now, whether it's Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, or even, the people at Fox News, no one has picked up on any of these issues. And in fact, Bill O'Reilly actually lied about your issue. Did he not?
And the irony is I never watch him because I think he's a pompous jerk. I never watch him. And I was flipping stations one day and happened to stop just as he was reading a question about the Connecticut Social Security number. And he said that Obama's father lived there for several years, and he probably got it for him. And that was an outright lie. And the next day, they had scrubbed that out of his show, and he was off for 2 days.
Well, let me say this. The Fox lying didn't start there. When the birth certificate was initially released, they came out and said that a computer expert from Canada named Jean-Claude Tremblay said that the birth certificate released by the White House was definitely legit. And that's actually from the title on their website, birth certificate legit. And people ask me what I mean when I say I bumped into Jean-Claude Tremblay almost by accident. I was on Twitter when this tweet comes floating by, or I think I should say fluttering by, and it's from someone named Jean-Claude Tremblay. And it has nothing to do with the birth certificate. It's on a totally different subject. But I thought, hey, wait a minute, I know that name. So I tweeted him and I said, are you the Jean-Claude Tremblay who's verified for Fox News that the birth certificate is legit? And he said, I never told them that. And I've been trying to contact them to tell them to retract that statement because I never said the birth certificate is legit. And he was trying to contact the woman who wrote the story. Her name was Jana Winter. And I watched him on Twitter. In fact, I've got screen captures of this, of him trying to contact her. She never responded to him. I tried to tweet her. She didn't respond to me. So I thought, okay, maybe she doesn't pay attention to Twitter. I'll call Fox News. I called Fox News. I left a voicemail for her, and she wouldn't respond to me. So here's a case where Fox News misquotes a computer expert saying that he said the birth certificate is legit when he never said that, and then absolutely refuse to retract the statement when he communicates to them numerous times that he wants it retracted because he says he never said it. And, to me, the fact that Jana Winter never got back with Jean-Claude Tremblay or me is proof to me that she's hiding something. Because if she had taped the interview, she could say, "Now wait a minute, Mr. Tremblay, I recorded that interview, and you did say that, and we're going to stick to our guns." But no, she's hiding from him. She's hiding from me.
Well, the truth doesn't fit the story.
Well,
they don't want the truth.
But so here we have Fox making up an expert in Canada saying the birth certificate was legit when he never said that. And then in your case,
as phony as the rest of them. I don't watch any of them.
And then in your case, O'Grady just makes up that Barack Obama Sr. lived in Connecticut. I mean,
Barack Obama Sr. returned to Kenya in July of 1962. He returned to Kenya. He never came back. He never left there again until late, like December of 71, when he went to Hawaii for a month, and then he went back to Kenya right from there and ended up dead 11 years later. He never was in Connecticut.
No, that was something Fox News just completely made up. And
I was so angry I can't even tell you.
So we have two examples of Fox News lying to try to protect Barack Obama, and yet all these conservatives out there watch Fox News and they're like, "Oh, I love Bill O'Reilly, I love Sean Hannity." They're the only people that tell the truth.
They're phonies. Even Hannity, who's going to stop at nothing. He has never once mentioned eligibility, not once.
Well, as someone who's tried to get on his show several times, both as a guest and as even just a caller, I can tell you that his screener will not let someone who wants to discuss eligibility. I mean, I'm even called up and I said, "Hey, I want to discuss the non-birther eligibility issues." There are non-birther eligibility issues that don't involve the birth certificate, and I couldn't even get on as a caller to discuss that. He's got anyone wanting to discuss this being screened out. He is terrified of this issue the same way Glenn Beck is terrified of it, the same way Mark Levin and Rush Limbaugh are terrified of it. People that I've respected for years, people that I wanted to be like, I now find are more interested in protecting their high-dollar salaries and more interested in protecting a fraudulent president than they are of doing their job right. What a joke. What a joke for Sean Hannity to say, "I'm going to vet this president."
Oh, it is. It's PR. But I'll tell you what, for a long time I was upset with Rush, but I'm going to cut him some slack for the following reason.
Okay.
Now, when I first found all this information, I sent it off to Glenn Beck's agent attorney. I mean, this is 3 years ago. I sent it off to Rush. I found an address for him. I never got a response from him or any of the approximately 18 congressmen or senators that I contacted, including my own, who is probably one of the biggest frauds in Congress. But Rush recently, this was within the past month, I listened to him intermittently because after about 20 minutes I get so irritated with the entire country that I have to stop listening. But somebody called in and was complaining about eligibility, and Rush said to him, "Well, what about the allegations that he is using a Connecticut Social Security number? What do you think about that?" Now, he was very clever in the way he did it because he didn't say it. He was asking somebody a question. Unfortunately, the guy did not have any information about it, and he said, "Well, I would just consider that another red flag." And I thought, oh, if only the guy had known anything about it, this would have been the perfect opportunity. But Rush did bring it up.
Well, that's like Sean Hannity. He asked Ben Shapiro, of all people, the editor-at-large at Breitbart.com, yeah, what do you think about the birth certificate issue? And then he asked him, what do you think about Arpaio's investigation? And he said, well, Arpaio didn't really bring anything out that wasn't out there before. And I'm thinking, Sean, when Ben Shapiro was on my show, I said, when Ben Shapiro said, oh, I believe the birth certificate is legit, I said, well, gee, when I look at the birth certificate, I see something that looks poorly forged. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember my exact words at that time. But I do remember asking him, what evidence have you looked at to lead you to the conclusion that the birth certificate is real? Guess what, Susan? Little Ben Shapiro couldn't think of a single piece of evidence he looked at. He stuttered, he stammered, then he started saying, we've got people at Breitbart.com who do that kind of thing. Of course, he never said he actually talked to them. The fact is, Ben Shapiro, and for that matter, the whole gang over at Breitbart.com, hasn't done a single damned thing to look into this. Not a single one of them has ever pulled it into Illustrator, separated the layers, looked at it. They've never looked at the Social Security card issue. They had the nerve, because I was communicating privately with Stephen Bannon over at Breitbart.com, and that's, he's Ben Shapiro's boss, and I had given him everything wrong with that Selective Service Card registration, and yet he still had the nerve to print an article where he talks about Obama being part of a group that encourages people not to register for Selective Service, but then he says, but Obama himself did register for Selective Service. And I'm thinking, you know what? You've ignored every piece of evidence I've given you. You're terrified of being called a birther. You're terrified of saying Obama's having a bad hair day. I don't have any use for Breitbart.com. I don't have any use for Fox. I don't have any use for our major conservative radio mouthpieces. They're all a bunch of cowards, as are the members of Congress, as are other major conservatives like Sarah Palin. She could come out on this issue and do a world of good for us, but she makes a lot of money doing what she's doing.
You are exactly right, which is one of the reasons I don't really care for her, because she's taken and it's everybody. And you're right. You made an observation before. It's all about the money. People are afraid of losing their high-paying jobs, and I think that, you know what, God help them when the country goes completely to hell. Good luck spending that money that you gave up your integrity for.
Well said. Now, on that note, we are out of time. I will give you one quick chance to tell anyone anything we may have left out about this issue.
Not really. I hope that I hope that there will be stories written about this. I expect there will be. At some point, I'm going to try and figure out how to put this together with all the documents as an e-book on Amazon, because they're obviously I can't send out 101 pages to everybody who wants it. The complaint is all the documents are in the courthouse in Geauga County. If people want, copies of the complaint, I can arrange for that to happen. And maybe there's a way that you could figure out how to attach it somehow.
Absolutely. I don't have it done yet, obviously, but by the time this airs, I will conclude the broadcast with instructions on how people can download the complaint.
Oh, that'd be excellent. That would be
no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. I'm happy to do it for you, Susan. Susan, you're a true patriot. You're a great American.
Don't give me too much credit. I'm just angry like everybody else. I'm sick of the politicians. The Democrats are bullies and thieves, and the Republicans are cowards. And I'm sick of all of them. The judges are corrupt. The country is in desperate shape. Everybody sits around and says, what can I do? What can I do? Well, I thought of something I could do, and that's what I've done. And, God willing, I'll be successful.
Well, we're going to be tracking this very carefully. Obviously, we certainly hope that you're successful. Now it is incumbent upon the Secretary of State in Ohio to do his job. I say once again, hopefully better than Ken Bennett, the Secretary of State in Arizona, did his. They sent him a verification from Hawaii that didn't even verify the birth date.
I know.
And he was like, okay, we're done.
I know.
Case closed. Move along.
That's so beyond pathetic.
It really is. And this guy wants to be governor of Arizona someday. I say good luck.
He ought to be governor of Hawaii. Sounds like he'd be perfect for there.
Yeah. Well, he already dresses down like they do there, so maybe he'll fit in over there. Anyway, Susan, thank you for being here today. Absolute honor to have you on the show. And once again,
thank you, Mark.
We'll be touching base with you from time to time to see how this is going. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful 4th of July.
Dude, we couldn't have done this on a better day.
No. God bless America.
Sounds good, Susan. Thank you.